Hi दोस्तों नमस्कार welcome to our YouTube channel Baji Rao IAS Academy. Today is 25th of September and we are going to discuss the daily Hindu newspaper analysis. But as you all know, we on the daily basis discuss some of the prelims previous year question. So here today the question is about the environment section and you have to answer it. Okay. And the question is the most important strategy for the conservation of biodiversity together with traditional human life is the establishment of option A biosphere reserve, option B botanical garden, option C national park, and option D wildlife sanctuary. And also here you have to elaborate more about the biological parks along with national parks, wildlife sanctuary. How do they constituted, by whom do they constituted? You have to observe all this, okay, and then you can answer it in proper way. And it is a easy question if you have understood the environment section, and if you not, then the option may be confusing for you. So better to have a proper understanding of these concepts. These all are protected area basically, and for the protection of flora and fauna, so you have to have a better clarification on these topics as well. So the answer of this question will be given to you in the last session of the discussion. So before that you can answer also in the comment section. So now we are starting to discuss about the editorial, and here we have to discuss two important editorial discussion that had been published in the Hindu. The first will be related to simultaneous elections. Already we have discussed basics about the simultaneous election, but now this article is some important, and they had mentioned some of the important constitutional hurdles that the simultaneous election may face. Along with the article talks about that this concept of simultaneous election is basically most preferred in the presidential system rather than the parliamentary system. Why? Because in the presidential system there is more concentration of power and there is no responsibility of the council of minister toward the Lok Sabha or the lower house. That is the point here. But in case of parliamentary system, we have the council of minister responsible to the Lok Sabha. So there can be the premature dissolution of the house, and if that is the case, then definitely there is a possibility of occurring of mid elections. That is the point that had been highlighted here. So we will discuss here in detail. Along with, we will start to solve some of the mains question, and you have to answer all the okay. And the second article will be related to the recently India has presided the G20 presidency, and there were many outcomes like the African Union got membership along with the inclusion of and establishment of Asia Europe Middle East corridor. Okay, so here we will be focusing on the corridor, and ultimately you should understand that the corridor which has been proposed by India along with the America actually do have Israel as participant. But did you observe that in the recent G20 presidency, Israel was absent? Israel was not invited, despite the fact that many countries were invited to participate in the G20 presidency organized by India. So why Israel was not invited? We will discuss on it, and also why, despite of the Israel as a part of this corridor initiative, if Israel and Saudi Arabia relation is not good, and if the relation does not improve, then the corridor concept may be restricted to the paper itself, not will be contemplated into the reality. That is also the point here we are going to discuss. So we are starting our discussion, and you have to attempt the question for the UPSC mains. And the question is, do simultaneous election compromise democracy and federalism? Here you have to analyze, meaning you have to talk about the pros and cons of the simultaneous election regarding how they can compromise democracy and federalism. Okay, for example, in case of India, if simultaneous election got approved, meaning if there is a premature dissolution of the house, then definitely there is a need to wait for the remaining period for the state legislature for the remaining term to get for the next election. That will be also a matter of concern. So here you have to talk the answer in case related to the federalism and democracy. That is the point, and you have to analyze in a proper detail. Okay, so we will be discussing this article also, and today is important matter of discussion on this topic. So now we are shifting our discussion on the first editorial, and it is related to GS paper 2. Here you will be also seeing some of the comparison between Indian constitutional system and the constitutional system of US, that is the presidential system. Okay, and this is also one of the important segment UPSC asks the question. So when we talk about the simultaneous election, it is very much in news. What does it mean? It means that conducting the Lok Sabha election and the state legislative elections on the same time, on the same period. That means simultaneous. That is the point, meaning the simultaneous. Okay, so when we talk about it, there is a problems or there is a concerns in implementing the one nation one poll. What are the concerns? First of all, it is not feasible in parliamentary democracy, because in parliamentary democracy what happens, that our council of minister basically is responsible to the lower house, and it is applicable to both at the state level as well as at the parliamentary level, meaning at the central level. So if the council of minister loses the confidence of the house, that means what? The council of minister will be dissolved, the government will be dissolved. So there is a proper chances that in the middle of the term there is a need to have a conducting of re-election, and if there is a need of conducting the re-election, that means the concept of simultaneous election may get failed. So how to avoid the middle term election? That is the point if we want to have a simultaneous election. So there is a probability, like only one option to ensure that the re-election is not conducted is to impose the president rule for the rest of the term. Meaning, let's say we conduct example. Let's say government has been constituted now, and for the 5 years we have the term, and if within the term, let's say after the proper working of 3 years, and the confidence of the council of minister get lost, that means the remaining 2 years, what will happen? So in case of proposing simultaneous election, there is a need that in this period there should not be the occurrence of election or the re-election. That means in this period you can impose the president rule, and if you are imposing the president rule, meaning you are challenging the federalistic principles. That is the point. Okay, so both these options are undemocratic and will defeat the essence of democracy, because president rule, meaning there is a centralization of the rule and there is no much response of the people here, because people choose the candidates to represent into the house. But in case of president rule, people are not choosing that. It is basically the president who will lead the institution, who will lead the government. Okay, that is the point here. And so here the government is run by a directly elected president or the governor, who does not need to enjoy the confidence of the majority. Okay, and that's why this proposal of simultaneous election may occur in presidential form of government. Why? Because in terms of presidential form of government, what happens is that the president is responsible for the working of the as the head of government. Okay, so in presidential system, we have a clear line of succession laid for the president or the governor, and even there is a mentioning that if the president dies in the midterm, then the vice president, and if the vice president also is absent, then the speaker for the remainder of the term will preside. Okay, so that is the point which are clear mentioned in the presidential system, but that is not in the case of parliamentary system. Okay, so that's why even the law commission along with some of the parliamentary committee had recommended that it would be exceedingly difficult to implement it without substantial changes to the constitution. So we have to change the constitution, we have to change the provision of the constitution so that the simultaneous election concept gets aligned to that. And there is a changes, but the changes requires very much. Which type of changes it requires, we will see that. And another suggestion which was proposed for the simultaneous election, that let's say the government loses the confidence of the majority, okay, via no confidence motion. No confidence motion is a proposal brought in the Lok Sabha or the state legislative assembly to disrupt the present government. Okay, here there is the indication that the government is not enjoying the majority, so there is a voting passed in the house, and if there is a acceptance of the no confidence motion, that means the government has to resign. That is the point of no confidence motion. So when a government loses the confidence in the house by passing of the no confidence motion, so what should be done? So there is a need that we have to pass another confidence motion that will have an alternate government, and that will for the remaining period will run the government. That is one of the suggestion. But there is a point of concern here, that despite we have the alternative government which has been established by passage of confidence motion, but even the legislature has the chances that they may not trust the alternative government. That means passing of the bills, money bills, will be more difficult, and that will be like situation of disturbances. Okay, that will not able to pass a single bill. Let's say if a government not able to pass a single bill, then what is the aim to have a confederation or the coalition? That is the point. So it will not be able to pass a legislation or even money bill or the finance bill, and you know that for a government the money bill or the finance bill is very important for the functioning of the government, for the healthier functioning of the government, and along with the machinery and institutions that are involved. Okay, so that is the point. Along with, there is a need to have a constitutional amendments, like we have to amend part 5 of the constitution that deals with the union, along with its various chapter like chapter 1, and along with articles like article 52, 78, and along with chapter 3. Along with, at the state level, we have to also amend the constitution. So we have to amend the part 6 that deals with the state. Okay, along with the chapters and the articles that has been mentioned here, that is the legislative power of the governor, because currently governor has not so much power specifically to the autonomy. Okay, so that means there is a need to amend all these. Along with, there will be an amendment required to include several new provisions within the constitution regarding the powers of the president, the powers of the governor, that I had talked to you already. Okay, so that is the issue. Along with, some people says like the parliamentary democracy in India is a part of basic structure. So that means what? As per the Supreme Court, the decision of basic structure, meaning that it is like a fundamental pillars of the constitution. If you alter the fundamental pillars, that means you are changing the core philosophy of the constitution itself. So in terms of basic structure, if any provisions of the constitution comes under a part of basic structure, means the amendment to change the core philosophy of that provision will not be suitable will not be accepted by the Supreme Court. That is the point. So some of the experts do argue that parliamentary democracy in India is a part of basic structure of the constitution, but that may not be true as per this article. Why that may not be true? Because when we talk about parliamentary democracy, then the basic structure should be democracy. Okay, and even what democracy can be safeguarded in the presidential system, like we see in the US, America. We have the presidential system in America, but also there is a very much a strength to the democracy. So that is the point. So here democracy may be the part of basic structure, but not the parliamentary democracy, and that will be decided by the Honorable Supreme Court. That is the point also. Okay. So recently government had taken various initiatives regarding the implementation of simultaneous election, like forming committee as well as parliamentary committee and the recommendations. There are many more things to come. So here we have to understand why the government is trying to push forward all these. We have to understand. Okay, like recently we talked about the committee under the former President Ramnath Kovind. It was constituted to discuss about the simultaneous election, the pros, cons, and all these. But even if any proposal regarding the simultaneous election to be implemented, there is a need to pass by a special majority from both of the house, that is the Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. Okay, and via special majority, meaning it requires minimum support of 2/3 majority in either house. But currently, if we talk about the government's seat, the government's strength in the house, that does not comprise the 2/3 majority. Okay, so there is a higher chance that from the parliament, either in the Lok Sabha or in the Rajya Sabha, that proposal may not be getting approved, because the position that the India Alliance seems that they are denying their support regarding this matter. So why then the government is pushing? So there is a higher chances that the government may trying to postpone the elections which is going to be conducted in this year regarding the 5 states, and by postponing they may reschedule it with the general election that are going to happen in 2024. Okay, but there is also a constitutional hurdle if government is trying to do so, because article 172 clause 1 states that a legislative assembly of a state, unless sooner dissolved, shall continue for 5 years from the date of appointment. Meaning once the assembly gets constituted, there is a need to have the term of 5 years, except that the house gets dissolved. That is the point. Okay, so what is the conclusion? So maybe the ruling party may be wanting to impose president rule under article 356 for these 5 states, maybe, but there is no clear cut mentioning by the government. Also, this type of scenario remains secret until and unless the decision is done. Okay, so despite it may get challenged in the Supreme Court, because here we have a Supreme Court that also observes all the actions of the executive or the government. So we will see that what is going to happen further. Okay, so we have discussed the article and it was related to the simultaneous election. Now we are shifting to the second editorial discussion. It is related to GS paper 2 and it will cover you the international relation topic, IR topic. Okay, so recently we have a G20 presidency by India, and there was huge success, and also the remarkable success was highlighted in various media, and at the global level it was very much praised by different head of the state, president or the prime minister. We have already seen. Okay, and there was various initiatives which was initiated here, like inclusion of African Union in the G20. Now G20 will become G21, that is also the point. Along with, there was the conclusion of biofuel alliance that will promote clean energy via biofuel, and along with substantial aid to be provided for Asia, Africa. Okay, and there was a decision to have an economic corridor that will connect India, West Asia, and Europe. That was also the point. So, in this article, our focus will be on the discussion of this economic corridor, because in this concept, there is the proposal to have a rail shipping route from Asia, that meaning the India, okay, and to Middle East, to Europe. We have already discussed this idea in great detail in our previous lecture. If you hadn't read about, then please go there and you can read also. We have a detailed understanding of this article, okay. And along with the final declaration, that was Delhi Declaration, that highlighted India's diplomacy power, okay, despite we have the fractured international order and power struggles we are seeing between US China, between US Russia, okay, that is the point. So this also indicated our Delhi Declaration and the diplomatic success. And remember these keywords: fractured international order, power struggles, because these keywords you have to use in the mains answer writing, and this will help you that your answer looks good. So that is the point. So when we talk about India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, that is basically a rail ship route, and that will transport goods to Europe from India via United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Israel. Now, why we highlighted Israel? Because Israel is also the participant of this initiative. And remember, Israel is not a part of G20. Okay. And also, there remains a tussle between Israel and Saudi Arabia regarding the Palestinian issue, as there is a historical disturbances on these relations of these two countries. Okay, we are not going to detail on this issue, but you have to first of all remember that from historical times there is a tussle between the Israel and Saudi Arabia, and now they are wanting that the relations should be normalized. Okay, so we have Israel as a participant, but you can see that India didn't invited Israel in the G20 meeting, despite many of the countries who were not the members of G20 were invited. So why Israel was not invited, we will understand in this discussion as well. And also, this concept of India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor will be a challenge to China's Belt and Road Initiative, that is the large infrastructure project that China is proposing, and via this they are taking various countries under its influence by giving loans, by giving the infrastructure built up and all these, and this all indicate the rise of China as well. Okay, so here for this corridor, Israel will provide all its skills and support. So we have talked about that India invited most Middle Eastern countries, but Israel, which is India's strategic partner, and Mr. Modi, our Prime Minister, and Mr. Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, share a good friendship but was not invited. So we have to understand why. First of all, there may be a factor like the abnormal relations of Israel with Saudi Arabia, first point. And maybe if Israel was invited, the Saudi Arabia may not felt good. That is also the point. And also, Mr. Biden, the president of US, might have also preferred an event without Mr. Netanyahu because of his domestic policy that is going on in Israel, and we are seeing the disturbances which are occurring in Israel. And note that the location of Israel is very important for the point of view, and you have to identify the location of Israel, the border they share, and what is the issue of Palestine and Israel in great detail. so that you have an overall idea of this issue. Okay, and we are seeing that from last 6 months, the Israel has a political situation disrupted. Okay, so you have to understand the basic issue of that as well. So that is the point, and the success of this proposed initiative will depend on whether the diplomatic relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia gets normalized or not. Why? Because Saudi Arabia represents the Muslim community of the global world. Okay, and also if the relation gets normalized, means Israel may have better relations with the Saudi partners like the Malaysia, like the Pakistan, like Indonesia, and all these. Okay, that is also the point. So the success of this initiative, that is the corridor, will depend on the diplomatic normalization. Otherwise, maybe this proposal remain a proposal, may not get transplanted into a reality. So that is the point. But here nowadays, Saudi Arabia is also understanding that peace in the region is very much important than the conflict. So Saudi Arabia is also pushing for peace. That is, they are normalizing. They are trying to normalize the ties with various countries that remains in conflict, like we are seeing about the Iran. Okay, so Saudi Arabia is willing to end the diplomatic boycott of Israel, and definitely it will be having a spillover effect with the relations with Pakistan, Indonesia, Malaysia, meaning the relations of Israel with these countries may get improved if Saudi Arabia tries to normalize the relation. But here Saudi Arabia has a demand that Israel should commit to the two-nation solution and the well-being of the Palestinian people, because Saudi Arabia tries to ensure that the well-being of the Palestinians should be ensured. And remember, the two-nation concept is also related to the Israel and Palestinian issue, and this was a question in the UPSC prelims. Okay, the question was like the two-state solution, sometimes referred in news, is related to which country? So that is related to Israel. Okay, and that's why there is a conducting of United Nations General Assembly, and on the sidelines of that, Saudi Arabia along with Arab League and European Union, Egypt, Jordan, these all are the participants, and they may launch peace day effort which is aimed at incentivizing Israel and Palestinian leaders that they should compromise and they should bring peace to this region by focusing on resolving the conflict. So, what is the concluding point here? That India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor will have to wait until the relation gets normalized. Otherwise, because of the dominance of conflict, the proposal may remain in the paper, may remain in the notebook, but never be implemented into the reality. That is also an important point. Okay. So we have discussed the two articles. Now we are shifting to the daily current affairs. The first article is about the NASA's Osiris-Rex spacecraft, and even this question was asked in UPSC. And what was the question? that जो आपका Osiris-Rex spacecraft है, it is related to which thing? So this was related to sample returning mission of the materials of the asteroid Bennu, है ना? There was a asteroid, there is a asteroid, basically asteroid Bennu, and NASA had launched a mission, that is the Osiris-Rex spacecraft, and via this spacecraft this will land to the asteroid Bennu, and they will collect samples from there and they will return to the earth. So already they had collected the sample, and now the first asteroid samples has been landed on the earth. So that is the point, that is the issue. So you have to understand that Bennu is the asteroid here, and the spacecraft mission was named as Osiris-Rex spacecraft mission, and this mission is of NASA, And what do you mean by asteroid? Basically, you have to understand that in our planetary system, we have the sun, we have the planets, okay, and these all revolve around the sun. So between the Mars and between the Jupiter, we have certain belts of the solid materials, which may be the remnants of the planets or the dust or unformed planets. So that all get accumulated into this asteroid belt, that is the belt between the Mars and Jupiter, and they also revolve around the sun. Okay, so NASA has via this mission tried to collect the samples of the material so as to understand the origin of the earth, so as to understand the linkages of the formation of the asteroids and many more things. So that is the point. And what will be the research and what outcome will maybe we will see in the coming days after the analysis of the data. Okay, so that is the point. And now the second article is about the Mukurthi National Park. So when we talk about the Mukurthi National Park, this national park, biosphere reserve, and the wildlife sanctuary is favorite topic for UPSC. And you can see from the previous year questions that these questions has been asked repeatedly and repeatedly. So you have to focus, you have to remember all these, specifically those in news, so that you have a better command over all this. So when we talk about Mukurthi National Park, it is in the Tamil Nadu state, okay, and also it lies in the western corner of Nilgiri Plateau, and Nilgiri is basically the junction that connects Eastern Ghat and the Western Ghat. Okay, that is also the point, and Nilgiri Hills is also important. Tell me about the highest peak of the Western Ghat. Okay, and even this Mukurthi National Park is a part of Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve, because Biosphere Reserve is very bigger area. Okay, and that may comprise wildlife sanctuary, that may comprise the national park as well. So it is sandwiched between Mudumalai National Park and Silent Valley National Park. Silent Valley National Park is where? You can tell me in the comment section, and tell me about the Mudumalai National Park, where it is located, in which state, because after recording you will be better remember. Okay, and what is the famous species here? Definitely you are well aware, it is about Nilgiri Tahar. Here is the Nilgiri Tahar, it is the picture of Nilgiri Tahar. Okay, that is the keyest one species here. So what was the news here? The news is about the there was the incident of poaching, the illegal collections of the materials in this park. So there was combining operations in this park so that to curb these illegal activities. So friends, we have discussed this, and now the question which we have started in the initial discussion, the answer is Biosphere Reserve. Biosphere Reserve is very much bigger area, even they may comprise national park as well. And in the comment section you have to talk about the Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve comprise of which national park, wildlife sanctuary, because even this was asked in UPSC previous year question. And also tell me the botanical garden, national park, wildlife sanctuary created or established as a protected site in India under which act, whether it is Forest Conservation Act, whether it is Wildlife Protection Act, okay, whether it is Air Pollution Act. Tell me the answer. That will also help you in combating the prelims challenges. Okay, so friends, this is the end of the article, and if you have enjoyed our discussion, please do like, share, subscribe, and also do comment your response. How are you feeling? Okay, so friends, thank you very much for the discussion. We'll meet again for the next discussion.